And again, another question, anonymous online, but someone says if you had to start from nothing, what would you do, for example, even a tiny investment like $1,000? Would you put it in financial education or low-risk investments, or both? What would you do?
Unfortunately, when you're at that level, my view is that you create an opportunity, get 2 or 3 jobs, create an opportunity where you start creating your own cash flow. Because, nowadays, $1,000 doesn't go a long way, unfortunately. But try and create a source of cash flow for yourself and build up a small capital. Very important. Now, by sitting, you will not create that. You have to get 2 or 3 jobs, or get a job and do something on the side, so you have extra cash flow. So, you see, when you're trying to create a cash flow, you need certain amount of money for living, for existing. Your house rent, your transportation, your food, your drink. So you create an income which is greater than what you need to survive. So when there's 2 jobs, so do something which would create. I used to have 3 jobs in England at one time. So, and the world has not changed. The key is cash flow. How much you can save. And you see, my view is that after your basic expenses are covered, if I make 100 shillings, I'm only entitled to 10 shillings out of 100. The rest of the 90 shillings must be invested in the business. And I think this is where a lot of people make mistakes. Once they start doing something well, they start getting into expenses, maybe have many wives and then girlfriends. So you start diverting your money even with the little success you have, and I think eventually it drowns you.
These kind of hurdles, what would be your advice to entrepreneurs? I mean, they're going to face everybody, tax, people who let you down, investments that turn bad. How do you maneuver them? What advice would you give?
Don't give up. And you see, sometimes you end up in a bad situation, but the people you meet along your journey, they become part of your networking. You build a relation with the people. Do not give up. If you fall down 3 times, 5 times, get up again. Now, there's a very famous American saying. When somebody is trying to join an insurance company as a salesman, one of the things they teach them is say, look, please knock the house where, of anybody 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. He will say no to you. Now what you do, there'll be a time when the guy also thinks of buying insurance. Who does he think of? The guy who's been knocking his door. So he will come looking for you. Or the 11 times you knock his house, he says, oh, okay, come in, I need insurance, So the point I'm trying to say, don't give up, please. One will fail in life, or if you don't go as you want, do not give up. And to me, continue, please.
As was it Ray Nelson Mandela once said, it's not how you go down, but how you get back up again. But a lot of people also asking about business partners. I mean, are you interested in taking on partners in your business? And if so, how do you find them? How do you find the right person?
I'm very skeptical about partners because partnership in Africa doesn't work. In England and other places, you see partnership lasting for 200 years, 150 years. Where I think, in my opinion, partnership help sometimes. However, it must be a very defined partnership and who's supposed to do what, because 99 out of 100 times, all of them end up in a problem and a quarrel, which is sometimes a little more expensive than when you started.
One thing I want to say to you is that I've seen as a journalist many, many partnerships, people with good intentions, good skills, they get together, they work hard. And then there comes a point sometimes where money can drive people mad and make them become reckless and destructive. How have you had to deal with that in your career?
Well, I have been very lucky that I've had extremely few partners, and I don't believe in partnership. I'd rather employ a professional or somebody who's good at what he's doing and pay him well and manage the things. So that is my way of doing things. And I say partnerships can start very well, and when the cash starts coming in, then the stronger partner wants to then dominate and get rid of the other one. So it all ends up not in a good way. So I would suggest where you can manage, or unless if you can manage yourself, grow up to that level, then you should look at equity funding or something like that to support your next growth. But that's on the last sort of.
Let's get to the issue now of banks. I mean, as a general rule of thumb, how do you deal with banks when you're trying to raise capital?
Well, I think the simple rules of the bank is very, very, very clear. Banks will give you when you have money. Banks are supposed to give you umbrella when you need it, not pull out the umbrella when you need them. So first, whatever you do, create a certain amount of capital yourself. And I find very skeptical that if you depend on your business from bank loan from the start, I think 95% chances in Africa that you will fail. But the cost of borrowing is extremely high. And the tenure of the loans you get is very short term. It's not like in Europe where you can get a loan for 20 years, 25 years at 2-3%. Here in Africa, you have to pay a very high premium for getting loans.
Well, that's coming on to my next question. But before I get there, I mean, would you advise anyone who starts a business to diversify also almost from the first few years? I mean, start buying property or some other form of capital to try to increase their stock?
Properties are the safest form of investment in Africa. However, it is also one of the most dangerous business to be in if you borrow money to develop properties. Because when the market becomes stagnant, you are stuck with a deficit on the cash flow, negative cash flow, and your bank loans are running. So in the beginning, try and get into real estate where you can sustain and manage it yourself. And then when you create 3 or 4 properties and you have income from 3 or 4 different sources from within the property sector, then you go and get a fixed property where you are assured of the continuity of being able to repay the loans. Then it's safe. But if you have another business where you're trying to get cash flow and borrow money for real estate, I think it's a bit risky in the part of where the financial sector is not, competitive.
Well, sticking with the capital theme, we've got a question here from Dr. Ansel William. You think he's in your parish too? Now, he says, how do you advise raising capital for startup entrepreneurs in Uganda? The bank loan have high interest rates, venture capitalists, few on the ground. Advise on the source of capital for startup entrepreneurs.
Well, I think the simplest way is to create a job and then have some business on the side. You need to create and save your own cash flow to get your basic minimum capital, right? And always look for a business which will give you a positive cash flow. And that is something that only you yourself can do it. Do not rely on one job or one sector, 2 or 3 different sectors, because if something is slow in one sector, you're always getting something from the other sectors.
How important is it as an entrepreneur to stick to your guns? I mean, I use the example that we talked about before, the time when you said no to selling a hotel to Muammar Gaddafi. I mean, not many people on this world actually have the courage to say no to the man when he was still alive. But what is your view on these things about just saying no matter how unpopular it makes you?
Well, I think, one needs to look at 2 things. When you have a project which is ripe and mature and it is cash generating, and then somebody comes up and offers you a price. If it's the right price, it's where you can use that money, then you consider it. If they offer you, money which it doesn't work in the, it's not comparable to the rate of return on the money you're earning. I'll give you an example. When Gaddafi came to Uganda, he stayed at a resort, the African Union conference. So he told his people, buy this resort, because Gaddafi wanted to make sure wherever he went, he wanted people to come and stay in his establishment. So those people came to me and I said, how much you want? I said, I want $200 million for my resort. So the people in between said, look, we will need 10 million, 25 or 30 million commission. I said, no, the international norm for a commission is about 10%. I can pay you 10% in a legitimate entity because I have to account for the taxes on my. So I said, I want 180 million in respect to what you do. And they were dilly-dallying, but they were, I think Gaddafi was also telling them to buy this property. But I stood to my principles, and I think in the meantime, Libya had his own problems, and things did not work out. So, but for me, I have no issue because I'm still earning money for
a large business empire. It must be a full-time job, surely, going around and revaluing everything you've got. How do you handle that?
Well, the values are, but I'm not really interested in the value. My most important thing is how much do I get out of this business? To me, that's more important, the cash flow, than what the building is worth. Because the building can worth $30, $40, $25 million, but then I'm not going to sell it. Because what is my interest is how much income I'll get from that building. And that's more important to me and our group than the value of the building.
In terms of, another question here from a business owner, they say that they're happier doing their own things as an entrepreneur and being charged with their own destiny. The question they've got is, how do you know that the people around you are representing your brand and doing your work the way that you want it?
But the good thing is we are very accessible to everyone. Somebody can go to one of our hotels and they're not happy with certain things. They will send a message to me, my son or my daughter, and say, look, we're here, we're not happy with your service. Something is not right. So we are with the people of this country. We are always accessible. And when the issues, people approach us and saying your management, we try to sort out issues with your management, but it's not working. Even like certain tenants may not agree with the laid-down structure, then they will also send us a message and say, look, can you help me out? I have this issue with your company. So we will actually then call the manager and say, look, what is the issue? And then we'll get the background to it, and then we try and see how we can resolve. You need to be with the people. You want the people to be part of your success.
And there's a question here, a bit from left field here, from somebody called Rama Kizito. And they're saying, what's your take on the fashion industry of Uganda? Do you have a take on it?
I think with the middle class in this country growing, I think there's a great opportunity. Ugandans have a lot of disposable income at this moment in time. These are second, third generation who have established themselves. They are educated. They have good jobs. So I think you need to create a brand name. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when we used to sponsor Miss Uganda for many years, it was at its infancy. But now the time is right. You need to create a fashion outlook where you can also make made to measure, made to design fashion clothes for people. Weddings are a big Asians in this country. So people would be there, but you create a brand name and a reliability. And if you say you're going to make your dress by certain time, you make sure by hook or crook you deliver, so that lady who's going to wear the dress in the wedding or a function feels satisfied. And she satisfies you 10 other people.
And another question that I've seen many entrepreneurs struggle with across Africa is this issue of growing too fast. A lot of businesses have a bit of success. All of a sudden, they've got 4 offices, 20 cars. How do you advise entrepreneurs to guard against overstretching yourself?
Well, I think I'm sometimes in a similar scenario where my children want to move very quickly, and I have to make sure I hold them back and said, look, grow organically. You have certain amount of cash flow coming in. You do just projects which would, you fund your own projects. Oh, then my son said, oh, let's borrow. I said, I'm not going to borrow. I want to sleep at night. I don't want unnecessary stress. So I think try and grow according to the cash flow you have or you're creating. It's probably the best option. Because opportunities come all the time. And when you are sitting on cash, take those opportunities.
And that's a question I have to ask you. I mean, at this stage, are you completely debt-free as we speak?
We don't have a debt. Our group is zero borrowing.
Incredible. So, another question I've got as well, which most entrepreneurs in Africa have to deal with, how do you deal with politics and politicians? What's your advice with entrepreneurs when it comes to something that is always going to be there on every day of our lives for the rest of our lives?
Politicians and bureaucrats are part and parcel of the society we live in. You can't detach away from them. But also in Uganda, where politics has matured, and politicians don't have much, except when they're making laws in the ministries for the good of the country. Now, even if they're making laws, we are, we go and invite ask for invitation, so we can also look at those laws which are good for business people, for the business community, or the business in general in Uganda. So every sector is a different kind of rules and regulations are coming. So we try and see how we can have an input, whether with the ministries or whether we have at the parliament where they're making the law. And you see, even in the parliament here, the committees invite you to make your input and tell them why, if they put this, what are the consequences, what are the negativity. So people listen.
Another question here from Alex Ezegala here, and he's asking, you've already got existing education institutions. What are your plans to expand in education?
We, at the moment, have 3 schools and 1 university in Uganda. In the next few years, we're going to put up 5 more schools between Kampala and Entebbe. And education sector that we hold dearly to our heart. And we are going to have a long-term interest in it. Continue investing in it.
So coming thick and fast, I'm trying to get them all in before we finish. But someone else asked, how do you deal with it as an entrepreneur in your business, seeing that money's not being diverted from the core business to other things when people start growing? How do you advise someone in a growing business to guard against that?
Well, I think in any business, the nerve center is your accounts department. We have created structures where, you have the management side and you have the accounts side. So we make sure that the account side are independent of the management and they report direct to us, the directors. And then, the cash flow is managed by me, my son, and my daughter. We manage the cash flow. So we don't want to go wrong, and we don't want to divert money to a wrong sector. So any new opportunity comes, we sit together and decide, and that is where the then it's a manage cash flow.
You mentioned your children just now. Somebody called Prasant Bhatia has come up, and they say that the way Sudhir's trained his children is awesome. I've worked with them, and they are marvelous. What should we do to nurture our generations? What are the 5 principles of management that you would teach them?
Well, one of the things that I would always encourage from parents is that when your children are young, take them to your place of work. Make sure that, if even if they're young, and then give them a plain paper so they do drawings and cartoons or whatever. Get them to your building sites if you're building, because most people in Uganda end up building their own houses. So take them around, make them understand why you are taking, but without putting too much emphasis that you're trying to teach him. Don't teach him, lead him to where you want him to, and let them mold themselves into the kind of things you want them afterwards, without putting on the children. Because if you put conditions, they would rebel against the idea of authority. But once you mold them and you grow them into your line of business without putting pressure on them, it's easier for the succession.
And there's another question as well from someone called Paresh. They're saying a common problem that a lot of entrepreneurs face in this continent, sadly, is that how do you overcome bribery in Africa? What do you do when someone asks you for a bribe? How do you approach it?
Well, unfortunately, it is the reality of life here. You see, if we don't call it bribe, but we call it project cost. Now, if you have a project worth $5 million and your project gets stuck, and then you need to facilitate somebody for 10 million shillings to fast track your project, unfortunately, it's a reality of the day. And I don't have an answer for that. And I don't think anybody said in this part of the world, politicians go and make sure that they pay the voters. Now it works all the way backwards into the system. And so really it is a way of life. You just have to manage these things in a way that we call it project cost. What do you do? I don't think there's an answer.
Well, just coming in very close to the end now, unfortunately, of our talk. It's been a fascinating talk. The feedback online has been incredible. People have been saying they've been enjoying it. They've been learning things from you. And I thank you again for taking time. Do you have any regrets at all in your entrepreneur career?
Well, I think I've been very fortunate in my life that whatever I try to do, whatever projects I have actually invested into, have all been successful. So there's a man up there who does look after me. And of course, the family is there together with me. So, it's part and parcel of that success. And also what they say, to be in the right time, with the right place, with the right project.
And lastly, I have one final question here from a man who says he's a friend of yours in Perth, in Australia. I'm sure you could find him. I'll give you his name afterwards. But he says, "Boss, when are you retiring?"
I'm only 65 years of age, and I still feel I brought energy in me. I don't think people like me would ever retire, in the sense that and then you go in and doing your hobbies in your garage or something. I don't think I am meant for that. I'll be around. One of my, in life, what I like to do is also travel a lot. Once we get to a level where I'm confident that the next succession or the successors will to my way of thinking, then I will try and every 6 weeks travel for a few weeks and see the world. But and you see, for people like me and so many others in this world, you give up and you become a cabbage. And I don't think I'm meant for that.
Lastly, how would you like people to remember you one day and say, okay, Sudhir Ruparelia or Kampala, Uganda, this is what I thought of him. What would you like?
Well, I just want people to say, I know Sudhir is a good man of his word. And I think, to me, that's the biggest consolation I can get from people. That's what I want.
Thank you very much indeed for your time and your insights. There's valuable information there for entrepreneurs from across the continent and around the world who logged on. There was nearly 130 of them who came on, and I'm sure everybody's learned something. Just one last thing before we go, Sudhir. I mean, what is something that you could give an entrepreneur that they could go in with the office tomorrow and do to improve their chances of success?
First of all, let me thank everyone who's taken part in this Zoom program, and thank you, Chris, for honoring me into this program, and Sean. Look, I think most important thing in life is to have a vision which you can achieve. Don't pitch it too high that you can't reach. You pitch it to a certain level. When you reach there, you can up your goal. So please do something which will be practical, make it work, and you cannot fail, and get into business where you enjoy doing. Be with the people, and every morning you wake up, you want to go to office. That is my simple philosophy in life.
Well, I just leave you with a message that somebody just put up finally here. They said, thank you very much for the talk. It inspires a lot of us. You are indeed an amazing businessman, Sudhir. So that's from one of the people who's been listening. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you for all tuning in to this first ever edition of Business Talk. From me, Chris Bishop, the founding editor of Billionaire Tomorrow. Thank you very much for coming on and watch out every month of entrepreneurs across Africa. Thank you very much indeed. For me, Chris Bishop. It's goodbye.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you,
Sudhir. Respect always. Thank you. Thank you, my friend. Cheers.